The train departed at 2 p.m. the next day. We were anxious and sleepless all night. I asked Tuyenbio how much money we had left in total. Tuyenbio counted for a while and said we still had 150. This little money would be enough for food and travel expenses to return. I thought for a moment that this wouldn't do. We hadn't been back there for over 10 years, and to return empty-handed without visiting our relatives would be improper. We had to find a way to earn some money to buy gifts for them. Tuyenbio said, "Why don't you just sell that jade piece of yours for 1,000 or 800? I immediately said, "You keep it. Damn you, you're always eyeing what your father left. Once it's sold, you can't get it back, and you'll regret it later." Finally, I found something worthwhile. I had an Eagle brand mechanical watch, a limited edition model with restricted supply. Even with money, you might not be able to buy it. Its market value at that time was over 200 yuan. I went to Fan Jiavin to sell the watch to Wang. This guy bought everything. As soon as he heard we were going to Inner Mongolia, he even sponsored us 100 yuan and made an agreement that when we found items, he would contact the buyer. In the 80s, 300 yuan was enough for an ordinary family to live lavishly for 2 or 3 months. It was a very large sum of money. With these 300 yuan, I bought a lot of food. Jams, milk candies, canned goods, chocolates, tea, things people in the mountains rarely ate. All the remaining money I exchanged for national food coupons on the black market. The day 2 night journey, filled with anticipation, was clearly a bit slow and drawn out. Upon arriving at the station, we still had to take a horse-drawn cart for one day, and then travel on mountain roads for another day and night. We went into the mountains. Less than a day in, we could no longer lift our feet. The gear we carried was too heavy. Each of us had to carry nearly 50 kilograms. I gritted my teeth and managed to keep going, but Tuyenbio truly couldn't walk anymore. He sat under a large tree, panting, unable to speak. Fortunately, we met a village accountant who was out working. When we first came here to work, he was just a scrawny boy, following us around all day, playing, and always calling out Brother Nyat and Brother Tuyenbio. K-Tone saw us with a lot of luggage and quickly ran back to the village to call some people to lead donkeys out to meet us. We knew all the older folks, but those two 12 or 13-year-old girls must have been born after we left. Both called me uncle, and hearing it made me feel awkward all over. I asked K-Tone, "Why don't I see any of the menfolk in the village?" K-Tone replied, "All the strong men in the village have gone to work with the archaeological team. After the big Tangshan earthquake in 76, even though that place is 108,000 li from here, it's still part of the same seismic belt. The earthquake split open the entire Trao Tim mountain in Lat Ma Khao. Inside there was a massive tomb, like a palace. Some brave villagers rushed in there to carry out artifacts, and that place was absolutely overflowing with good stuff. Somehow, word got to the county government, and the archaeological team followed right away. They say it's the mausoleum of Empress Xiao of the Great Liao, and they confiscated all the good stuff everyone had taken, not letting them keep anything. The archaeological team also didn't overlook the things in Trao Tim Mountain. It seems they said there's still a lot of good stuff that can be dug up underneath. So they hired all the villagers to work, providing plenty of food and drink, and even paying 3 yuan a day. They've been working like that for several years now, and it's still not finished. So many people are still working in there." Tuyenbio and I nearly spat blood upon hearing that. They were truly daring to disturb the ground of the Grand Duke, showing no respect even for Buddhist principles. But there was nothing we could do. We couldn't compete for territory with the Bureau of Cultural Relics archaeological team. Since we were already here, we decided to stay and visit for a few days, then figure things out. When we left, we could think of another place to search. After all, Trao Tim Mountain wasn't the only place with large ancient tombs. As we were about to reach the village, our relatives, having heard the news, were all standing at their doors gathering around us, asking kindly. Yen Tu led her daughter over, crying and saying, "Oh my God! Brother Nyat, Brother Tuyenbio, we've missed you so much. Why have you been gone so many years without any letters?" Yen Tu's father hugged us tightly. "You two rascals, you just disappeared without a trace. If you don't stay for 2 or 3 years this time, I won't let either of you go anywhere." Tuyen Bio and I both cried. Tuyen Bio had lived here for 6 or 7 years, while I had only stayed for 1, but the people here were honest and simple. If you lived here, everyone would forever consider you family. This place was still the same as before, nothing had changed. There was no electricity, no national road, and not a few people had never seen electric lights in their entire lives. The more I thought about it, the sadder I felt, secretly vowing that when I had money, I would definitely build a big road for the villagers. But when would we ever have money? At this moment, the old village party branch secretary was also helped over. Before he even reached us, he loudly declared, "The chairman's children are back." How is the chairman doing now? How far has the great cultural revolution progressed? Hearing that, I felt distressed. How could I know if the chairman was well? I quickly ran to support the old man's arm. "The chairman is still well, sir. Every day, he rests in the memorial hall. Anyone who remembers him can buy a ticket to visit him. Oh, and also, the Cultural Revolution ended a long time ago, sir. Now Comrade Xiaoping is leading everyone in reform and opening up." The old man seemed not to hear what I said, drawing out his voice as he asked loudly, "What? What is Comrade Xiao Ming doing?" Yen Tu, standing beside me, reminded me, "Don't listen to the old man anymore. We don't know why, but in 73 he went completely deaf, can't hear clearly, and he's also senile." Now I understood. So that was it. I spoke loudly into the old man's ear. "Secretary of the party branch, I brought you lots of delicious food. I'll give it to you later. You can eat it gradually." Everyone walked and chatted, and in a flash, we were in the village. The party branch secretary still called out loudly from behind, "My children, if you go back, remember to report to the chairman. Our village firmly supports the great proletarian cultural revolution. Just do whatever you need to do." That evening, the small table placed on the earthen bed in Yen Tu's house was laden with fried wild chicken, smoked venison legs. In the center of the table was also a large pot of pickled vegetable and meat soup. Yen Tu's husband also knew us from before, but this time he was working at Trao Tim Mountain and we hadn't met him yet. Yen Tu's father sat with us, drinking wine and chatting. I brought up the ancient tomb in Trao Tim Mountain, and then asked him if there were any other ancient noble tombs in this large mountain range. From ancient times until now, people in the highlands have always considered tomb robbing a side profession, with no moral issues whatsoever. The north was like that, and in the Shaanxi region of the south, even robbery and murder were considered secondary occupations. People there farmed during the day and robbed at night, hiding in the forests, specializing in killing merchants from other provinces who passed through. No one ever returned alive. This was also due to hundreds of thousands of years of survival pressure. Near mountains, there was plenty of firewood, near rivers, plenty of fish. In remote, secluded areas, they ate ancient tombs and ate passers-by. As long as there was an ancient tomb nearby, someone would inevitably dig it up. In border regions, the emperor's law yields to village customs. Although these reasons, from a legal perspective, cannot be justified. Most ancient tombs here are very old, having undergone countless transformations of land and sea, and long since lost any clear signs. Otherwise, they would have been dug clean by the locals long ago. Yen Tu's father recounted that a long time ago, before the liberation, this village also had a few young amateur tomb raiders. At that time, they didn't know Trao Tim Mountain had tombs. They went to a place mentioned in legends to dig for gold, but for some unknown reason, they encountered something and never returned. Yen Tu's uncle was one of them. Yen Tu's father knew the approximate location of that legendary place, but he had never dared to go there. Recalling old stories, the old man immersed himself in memories, lit a Yabulai cigarette, puffed a few times, and after a long moment of contemplation, finally spoke, "You want to find ancient tombs? In this area, apart from Trao Tim Mountain, there's nowhere else. But I've heard the elders say that if you go north from here, cross the Doan Sun Forest and enter the mountains after 5 days of travel, at Hak Fong Khao on the Sino-Mongolian border, there's Danyan Khao. It's said that place is full of mausoleums of Jin dynasty princes and nobles. However, that place is deserted and Wildman frequent it. Do you have the guts to go? I had heard the name Danyan Kao before, but I had never heard that there were ancient tombs there. What exactly harmed that group of tomb raiders back then? Not only Yen Tu's father and I didn't know, but no one in the entire village had any idea. In the deep forests and remote mountains, there were truly too many dangers. Various fierce beasts, even changing weather and the natural environment could all take people's lives. If you stepped into a quagmire, which was actually a type of mud pit formed by layers of dry leaves after being eroded and rotted by rainwater, and fell in, even gods or Buddhas couldn't escape. We were determined to go find it. Yen Tu's father couldn't dissuade us. No one in the village had ever actually been to Danyan Kao at Hak Fong Kao, only knowing its approximate location. Because that place bordered the frontier, no one lived there. Even when villagers went into the mountains to hunt or gather forest products, they couldn't go that far. Moreover, Yen Tu's father was old and suffered from rheumatism, so he couldn't go into the mountains anymore. Yen Tu was now pregnant with her second child and also couldn't travel far. All the young, strong men in the village had gone to work in Lat Ma Kao, and they wouldn't be back anytime soon. Yen Tu's father said, "I can't personally lead you, and I feel uneasy about it. Actually, the danger of Danyan Kao isn't from the Wildman, but mainly its complex terrain. As soon as winter arrives, there are blizzards, and it's very easy to get lost in there. However, it's early autumn now, so you don't need to worry about that. If you go, you must bring some good dogs and find a skilled guide. Our village has been raising a few mastiffs these past few years. This time you can take all of them." Mastiffs are not just Tibetan mastiffs. In the Northeast, people also call large fierce dogs mastiffs, which are not exactly the same as Tibetan mastiffs. Herdsmen and hunters living in the deep forests and grasslands of the north were often threatened by wild beasts like wolf packs and black bears. Relying on ordinary hunting dogs made it very difficult to cope, so they learned from the Tibetan way of raising mastiffs. There's a saying, 9 dogs, 1 mastiff, which doesn't mean that out of 9 dogs, 1 will become a mastiff. It means that a good breed of mother dog gives birth to a litter of 9 puppies. These 9 puppies are then locked in an underground pit from birth, deprived of food and water, so they slaughter each other. The single survivor is the mastiff. Mastiffs are incredibly fierce by nature. 3 mastiffs are enough to tear apart an adult bear. The whole village had a total of 3 mastiffs, plus 5 of their best hunting dogs, all of which were given to us. Yen Tu's father also introduced us to a guide named An Tu. An Tu was only 19 years old and belonged to the Orichan, a very rare ethnic group. Among the young hunters in the village, no one was more outstanding than An Tu. She was a famous sharpshooter in the region. Don't underestimate her just because she was young. From childhood, An Tu had followed her father into the forest to hunt, and there was nothing in the forest she didn't know. 2 of the 3 mastiffs in the village were personally raised by An Tu. Before we set off, I asked Yen Tu to help prepare some things, such as a bird cage, glutinous rice, black donkey hooves, a crowbar, a large barrel of vinegar and white liquor. After everything was arranged, Yen Tu's father repeatedly urged us not to force ourselves if we truly couldn't find anything, to leave early and return early. He then saw us off all the way to the Don Sun area before turning back. I was relatively confident I could find the ancient tomb. As long as we reached Danyan Kao, if there was no tomb, then so be it. But if there really was one, I would definitely find it. I learned a little about tomb raiding from books, but mostly from what my grandfather told me before. My grandfather, Ho Kwak Wa, used to be an officer for an old warlord. Some of his subordinates had followed the great bandit Sun Dianying, participating in many large tomb excavations, and their experience was very rich. Most of what my grandfather knew came from their stories. Historically, tomb robbers were generally divided into 2 types: official robbers and civilian robbers. Official robbers were those who openly carried torches and tools to dig, specializing in royal tombs. The hegemon, King Shang Yu, at the end of the Qin dynasty, can be considered the progenitor of official tomb robbery. As for the Mojin Shaowei during the Three Kingdoms period, they merely systematize official tomb robbery, forming an operational chain. Among civilians, there were also two types: amateurs and professionals. Amateurs would dig up whatever they found, while more professional ones only sought out tombs of princes and nobles, not bothering with smaller tombs. The key to tomb robbing lies in whether an ancient tomb can be found. This is an extremely profound field of study. China has experienced several thousand years of dynastic changes, with periods of prosperity and decline. The methods of construction and site selection for imperial mausoleums were not the same. During the Qin and Han dynasties, what was done above was imitated below. Most tombs were shaped like an inverted dough, a measuring scoop. An inverted dough refers to a mound of earth resembling an upturned rice scoop covering it. Its four sides showed clear angles, and the top was a small square platform, somewhat similar to Egyptian pyramids, except Chinese mausoleums had one more side. Compared to the pyramids of the lost civilization of Maya found in South America, they were astonishingly similar. No one could guess the relationship between them. During the Tang dynasty, mountains were opened to build mausoleums, grand and magnificent projects with an imposing presence. This was also related to the national strength of the Great Tang at that time. Imperial tombs of the Tang dynasty everywhere exuded the style of the foremost empire under heaven, unique and supreme. During the period from the southern Song to the late Ming and early Qing, continuous warfare and several of the greatest natural disasters in ancient Chinese history occurred. The nation's strength waned, and the scale of noble and princely mausoleums was no longer as luxurious as before. Later, during the Qing dynasty in the Kangxi and Qianlong eras, the country's productivity and economy were strongly restored. The architectural style of tombs also changed accordingly, placing more emphasis on above-ground architecture combined with landscape gardens and ancestral temples. Having absorbed anti-theft experiences from previous dynasties, the structure of Qing dynasty burial chambers was extremely sturdy, making them the most difficult to tackle. But in the end, regardless of the dynasty, China's burial traditions for thousands of years have been based on the 5 elements and Feng Shui arrangements, derived from Fuxi's 64 hexagrams, all aiming to fully capture the natural configuration of the land. Though diverse in form, they share a common origin. Tracing back to the source, it's merely about seeking the 8 characters. Within the circle of creation, heaven and man are one. Burial culture is a distinctive feature of Chinese civilization, having a significant impact on minority ethnic groups such as the Mongols, Khitans, Tibetans, Jinchi, Wasun, Shanbei, Kemin, Jurchens, Tangduts, and others. Their methods and layouts of mausoleums all mimicked those of the Central Plains, but mostly only copied the superficial appearance. It can be said that as long as one knows how to examine the flow and direction of mountains, rivers, and streams across the land, ancient tombs, no matter how deeply buried, can be easily found. Continuing straight ahead was the vast, endless primeval forest. Antu led 8 large dogs guiding the way. Tuyen Bio pulled a pony carrying tents and other equipment, and I carried a hunting rifle behind. The 3 of us entered the high, deep mountains of the Sino-Mongolian border region. Tuyen Bio walked and asked Antu, who was ahead, "Little sister, what exactly are the Wildman in Danyan cow like? What do they look like? Have you ever seen one?" Antu turned around and replied, "I don't know what Wildmen are like either. I heard my father say that many people have seen them in recent years, but no one has ever caught one alive, and no dead bodies have been found. Those who have seen them can't clearly describe what they actually look like." From behind, I laughed and said, "Damn you, Tuyen Bio, you're so stupid. You should know just by the name. A wildman is a person born in the forest, that's all. From now on, you need to study carefully, understand? And do you know what a person born in the forest means? It means they can sprout from the ground or bloom from trees. Either way, they aren't created by people. Stories about wildmen in Shenangjia, Sichuan have existed for a long time. I heard about them when I was in the army. It's said that a PLA soldier once shot a wildman in Shenangjia, and its body fell down a precipitous cliff thousands of zhang deep. In the end, it was unclear whether it was truly a wildman, a human, or just a hairy orangutan. Almost all witnesses who had seen Wildman unanimously affirmed. Wildmen are tall, strong, healthy, and covered in a layer of long black hair. According to An Tu, Danyan Cow at Hak Phong Cow was not originally called Danyan Cow, but Tu Nyan Cow, Dead Man Gully. Tracing back even further, that gully was not called Dead Man Gully either, but Bong Wei Cow, which was originally a burial ground for Jin dynasty nobles. Later, when the Mongol army decisively defeated the main Jin army at Hak Phong Cow, the bodies piled up like mountains. The Mongols threw the corpses into this gully, nearly filling the entire ravine, which is why the locals then called it Tu Nyan Cow. Later, some people reportedly saw Wildman in the vicinity, and through circulating rumors, Tu Nyan Cow was eventually replaced by the name Da Nyan Cow. Wildmen are not that scary. No matter how powerful they are, can they really contend with these mastiffs? An idea suddenly flashed through my mind. I wonder how much a Wildman would sell for on the market. But I immediately thought that doing so would be inhumane. It's best not to mess with living creatures. We should still focus our attention on digging for ancient tombs. Because we had a horse, we couldn't climb any overly steep mountains. When we encountered large mountains, we had to go around, so our journey was extremely slow. Fortunately, the primeval forest in autumn was beautiful, with countless paths and mountainsides covered in a mix of red and yellow leaves, making people gaze in wonder and forget their fatigue. Occasionally, in the distance, a few pheasants, rabbits, roe deer, or muntjac would run out of the forest, and An Tu would let the dogs chase and catch them. In the evening, we set up camp to rest, picked some wild mushrooms and herbs in the forest, and lit a campfire to cook. Tuyen Bio and I ate to our heart's content. We hadn't had such a lavish meal of wild game in days. When traveling in the mountains, if you didn't bring dogs, you could only sleep in trees. We brought 3 large mastiffs and 5 other big hunting dogs. Such a force was almost unrivaled in the forest, unless we encountered 3 or more bears. An Tu said that mastiffs were the bane of bears. Bears in the forest would immediately flee far away as soon as they heard mastiffs barking. So that night, we all slept in our tents, with the loyal hunting dogs guarding around us. There was nothing to worry about. Those dogs were far more reliable than humans. An Tu's personality was much more assertive than Yen Tu's when she was young. She was the type of person who spoke and had to be obeyed, and if she threatened, you had to be afraid. Which path to take, what to eat, everything had to be strictly followed according to her. Who asked her to be the guide anyway? Even the dogs all listened to An Tu. Although I was used to being a company commander, in front of her, I could only try my best to tolerate being a lowly private first class. However, An Tu was truly talented. Hunting, finding paths, searching for spring water, distinguishing edible from poisonous mushrooms. In the deep forest, how to find wood ear mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, persimmons, hazelnuts, Codonopsis, Cassandra berries. She knew almost everything. Moreover, there were creatures in the mountains whose names I didn't even know and had never seen in my life, yet An Tu would recount them precisely. What animal it was, where it lived, what its main food was, and what traps to use to catch it alive. Tuyen Bio and I listened wide-eyed, only able to utter 2 words. We're impressed. The Orichan people are born hunters. The 3 characters Orichan are the name the government calls this ethnic group, which is not entirely accurate. Sometimes they also refer to themselves as Orichan or Elarun, meaning roaming deer hunters in the vast mountains and forests. They roamed the old forests of the Lesser Khingan Range all year round, living a nomadic hunting life. When China was just liberated, the remaining Orichan population was no more than 1,000. The state allowed them to leave the harsh old forests to settle in one place, but their people had an almost deified reverence and admiration for the nomadic hunting life of their ancestors. They worshipped shamanism and revered nature. Although they had settled, they still frequently went into the forest to hunt. On the road, everyone was taciturn, speaking only a few brief sentences. We set off early and rested late, traveling continuously for 6 or 7 days through the primeval forest. Finally, we arrived at Hak Phong Cow, bordering Sino, Mongolia. The forest at Hak Phong Cow was incredibly dense. Deep inside, there seemed to be no solid ground to stand on, only cold, resistant trees like white flowers, birches, sea pines, and larch trees. On the ground, dry branches and fallen leaves piled up layer upon layer. Every step was a sinkhole. It was easier for people to walk, but the bulky packhorse often sank its legs, sometimes unable to lift them. At those times, we had to exert all our strength, pushing and pulling, advancing step by step. It's unknown how many years the bottom layer of soil had been there. Rotten branches, leaves, and the carcasses of animals trapped and dead inside emitted waves of putrid smell. This foul odor, mixed with the fragrance of flowers and the scent of sea pines, became even more peculiar. At first, it was somewhat unpleasant to smell, but with more exposure it became addictive. Upon reaching Hak Fong Khao, the rest was up to me. We found a gorge, which must have been the legendary Danyan Khao. Outwardly, this place was nothing special, nor as perilous as Lat Ma Khao, but that was just the initial impression. An Tu said it seemed certain that there was a quagmire in this gorge, and we absolutely had to look carefully before taking another step. Falling into that pit would mean no escape. If we wanted to go down into Danyan Khao, each person had to prepare a wooden stick to probe the way. The layer of leaves underneath was truly too deep, even more frightening than a swamp. Fortunately, it wasn't the rainy season, otherwise, going down would be impossible. Danyan Khao was part of the Greater Khingan Range. The mountainsides on both sides were gently sloping, and the entire gorge faced north, south. To the east and west were hills and mountains. Throughout the year, the duration of sunlight in the central area was very short, making it appear gloomy and silent. The gorge was filled with rotten leaves and wild grass. Apart from a few sparse, low-lying shrubs, no other plants grew. Leaving the gorge, trees became even scarcer. The primeval forest ended here. Another 200 li ahead was the vast grasslands of Outer Mongolia. At this moment dusk was falling, and a blood-red sun hung low in the sky. We climbed the hillside and gazed into the distance, only to see the sun seemingly about to drop. Heavy red clouds spread across the distant horizon, and the entire sky seemed stained with dense oil paint colors. Dense forests covered the endlessly stretching mountain range, and the vast grasslands ahead now appeared hazy and indistinct in our sight. It was truly deep mountains and blue seas, with a blood-red setting sun. Tuyen Bio admired the beautiful scenery, his heart joyful. Nyat. The scenery here is so beautiful. This trip of ours really wasn't in vain. What worried me the most was the ancient tomb in Danyan Khao. I carefully observed the surrounding terrain, then referenced it with a book, 16. Character Yin, Yang Feng Shui Secret Arts. After that, I took out a compass to determine the Bagua directions, secretly exulting in my heart. It's as if we've arrived. Damn it, there must be an ancient noble tomb in this gorge. Danyan Khao, originally named Bong Wei Khao, had a strong and imposing topography, with an aura that seemed to swallow everything. On one side was the grassland, on the other it connected to the Greater Khingan Range. The vast Mongolian steppe was like an endless sea, and Bong Wei Khao was like a large stream flowing into that sea. Although the feng shui here was not sufficient for burying emperors, it was more than enough for high-ranking officials like great generals or princes of 10,000 households. We would wait until the moon was high in the sky. Its light would guide us to the location of the ancient tomb.